世间所有的相遇，都是久别重逢。
清风明月如怀抱。
Okay, today is Tuesday night, kind of late, right? But been thinking through the weekend. Actually, a long weekend if you live in North America, in the US, right? I think it's Martin Luther King, remembering the great man, right? Is federal kind of national holiday, right? Now, people are not on holiday on the World Economic Forum, right? Carney, the Premier of Canada, right, there speaking. And this is one of the triggering points, right? We've been talking about the Canada and robotics, right? The strategic pivot, financial capital, right? Try to build some sort of third place, if you will, a demilitarized zone in terms of the various warfares, right? Name it, like the chips, right? The silver, right? Obviously the financial side is at stake, okay? The trade, tariff, right? All sorts of things, the fragmented supply chain. So, yeah, it depends on which side you want to look at it, right? What is perspective? Canada and China signed some strategic partnership, some EVs going to come in, right? And also the precious metal, a lot of things at stake, right? And some sort of currency exchange. If you look at the whole package, it's about $1 trillion. It's a huge deal. So you really have to think about it. Obviously, not everybody is going to agree, and in fact, many are going to fight back, argue, going to say this and that. But everybody is entitled to opinion. That's fine. Right? Like what I'm saying is also my opinion. Nothing, not representing anybody, and again, nothing to do with politics. Zero there. Never. Don't really not watch TV or news either, right? But as significant as that, because I was living the sort of bilateral connection point for my whole life, right? In the West for 30, 40 years already, right? Closing to 60, right? There are many things you've been through, and what I learned is that, you can get excited when things happen, but you have to allow it to sink in, right? Many things will change, right? People will change, right? And it takes time to sink in and allow people to, change back and forth, twist and turn, right? But the overall direction seems to be a divergence, a pivot globally, and some sort of competition is there, that's natural and that's good. And I believe we need Canada, such as Canada, right? So our angle are really from AI robotics, right? They're going to be have new workforce, reindustrialization, right? And when we talk about AI and robotics, we really mean that it has to benefit us, right? Benefit you and me, the common nurse, right? Not just the big businesses, right? In a tangible way, we do have to feel that, make a lot life better, right? Not just we have to pay more money to buy more new kind of devices and stuff, right? But that takes billions of people to work together. So really, we need collaboration, right? We need to find a way to build common ground, right? Like a bridge, something, right? We need to work together. Competition is good, but collaboration also required. If they propose some sort of a strategic corridor, the final assembly point, a lot of good concepts, right? How really going to work out is not clear to me, right? One of the things clear is that you need to bring together the AI and robotics innovations, technology, and products, right? Talents especially, right? Together, right? Like, OpenAI, fantastic company, right? Google, right? You name it, Elon Musk, such individual, right? You have, even recently. Oh, by the way, he sued Microsoft and OpenAI, right? For good reasons, right? And on the other side, President Trump, if you know, US side, sued JP Morgan and some other banks on Wall Street because cannot do the normal banking, right? It has to go for the crypto kind of currency or payment, something like that, right? So yeah, I'm going to show you a bit more details, but just bring these two lawsuits out. I think we need to monitor, right? It is not as significant as the World Economic Forum, right? Maybe more significant, depends on how you look at it, right? Because they're going to set some precedents in terms of how AI and robotics is going to evolve, right? As a business venture, as a technological innovation, right? As the regulatory and governance, right? And more importantly, as the new financial ecosystem that I always propose and advocate, right? And I try to be part of it, right? And building up business of my own, right? Yeah, because this is all coming together to me. Right? So really, we're looking at reindustrialization or new industrialization, new workforces. Talents need to come together. We talk about acquisition and merger. Many times you buy a company or your acquisition, really just to get a couple talents, right? To get a IP, a patent, some technology. That's what we really do, right? It's very different than a few years ago, right? The acquisition merger goes a different way, right? So as you can see, talent is important. The movement of talents is important, right? The integration of technology innovation, right? It is important. Right? Now, the approach from China and the approach from the US are representative of two major mainstream approaches to AI, robotics, the new financial ecosystem, the new reindustrialization or new industrialization, no matter how you call it, physical AI. I'd rather call it, robotics or sovereignty robotics, right? Sovereignty robotics meaning like you need to be able to run it locally. Think of a robot, right? I'd like to think of a human, like human being versus robotic being. Right? That's my sort of proposal there, right? You need to have a brain, you need to have hands and eyes and nose, right? You have limbs, you can work, not just talk, you can action, right? You could also be part of the community. You cannot violate the safety and the security wherever you belong, you function in, right? But eventually, right, I'd like to see the human control sort of, physical AI or sovereign robotics, right? But in order to build up such a future, you need not only the integration and free flow, or not free flow, some terms, conditions of technology, talent, but also the money, right? Probably we're in a historical moment when we need to define what money really is, right? To a certain extent, right? And that's why we reviewed the silver, the gold, and coins. We reviewed the history of that. We're going to dive deeper there. Hopefully, eventually, going to make sense, right? But before I get into more sort of let's listen to what the Premier is saying, right? Then we can continue, right?
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat. And as a result, many countries are drawing the same conclusions, that they must develop greater strategic autonomy in energy, food, critical minerals, in finance, and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And there's another truth. If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactionalism will become harder to replicate. Hegemons cannot continually monetize their relationships. Allies will diversify to hedge against uncertainty. They'll buy insurance, increase options, in order to rebuild sovereignty. Sovereignty that was once grounded in rules but will increasingly be anchored in the ability to withstand pressure. This room knows this is classic risk management. This room knows this is classic risk management. Risk management comes at a price. But that cost of strategic autonomy, of sovereignty, can also be shared. Collective investments in resilience are cheaper than everyone building their own fortresses. Shared standards reduce fragmentations. Complementarities are positive sum. And the question for middle powers like Canada is not whether to adapt to the new reality. We must.
Okay, you heard the Premier speaking at the World Economic Forum, right? What do you think? What did you hear? Right? It's a rupture. It's not a transition. Right? Resilience, sovereignty, risk management, right? Collaborative, coming together. Yeah, I think it's probably a politician speaking for sure, but sounds to me it's a financier speaking, right? But certainly, maybe I've been in this world, in this industry for too long, right? 30, 40 years, right? If you know, Mr. Carney used to be a senior executive in one of the top banks. I think it's Morgan Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. Forgot it, but you can look it up. And also been the governor of Bank of Canada and Bank of England. He certainly knows. He has the appreciation what really going on. Right? So what is really going on? Right? I mean, put it simply, right? He tried to build a position for Canada, right? Like every leader for their own country. That's the job, right? So you hear the word middle power, right? Canada, right? To the value-based, okay, has a cost. Insurance has a cost, right? It's classic risk management. So what are the risks? Okay, do we know? I think you might heard of the. I've been talking through that, right? The two lawsuits. Okay, I can show you a bit more, right? And one is, let's see. Is Elon Musk is suing the OpenAI and Microsoft, right? The crisis of AI governance and the rise of decentralization. Okay, this 134 billion, right? It's a wake-up call. So what does it mean? Why Elon sues OpenAI and Microsoft? Right? There are two stories there. One is, OpenAI versus closed AI, right? It started as a charity proposition, they benefit humankind, right? In their words, right? Not how much true or false, right? It's a different story. But again, that is a business strategy, right? You always, if you're in that, you understand the motive there, the disruption, obviously, right? Attention. It also set a precedent right there, you're going to see. The other is, really, you hear that partnership between OpenAI and Microsoft, right? And by the way, if you be observing, like I've been explaining, I think Microsoft probably made a strategic error there, right? Because Sam Altman is making all those extravaganza sort of moves, right, to position OpenAI not really depend on or rely on Microsoft. Right? It's more than independent. It's actually bigger than Microsoft. That's what he's portraying, right? Let everybody believe. Right? So now I think Microsoft is waking up a bit, right? Not by Elon, but by internal advisors. I mean, even me realize it. I believe there are many people who realize that, right? They have to repivot, right? Adjust their strategy, right? You cannot just think. I can explain better, right? Maybe I put in the framework, but let's go through this picture first, right? Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. But on the other side, you hear the new launch of MicroHeart, right, from Elon Musk, trying to take on the whole Microsoft stack, right? That's another audacious move, right? It proves how AI and robotics can do for us. Right? And the whole stack, think about it, the Office and, and Google obviously have I'm using their Google Docs and Drive and Shares, all kind of stuff. Pretty cool, right? On the China side, recently, I think Harmonious OS from Huawei, they launched the whole, laptop or computer, right? PC, totally, right? The operating system, the applications, the hardware, the peripherals, everything is, I think 100% probably made in China, right? Obviously they have their office, like how to WPS, I think, right? It's like a word, right? They have many other. It's like you might heard of the chip design system, right? The machine learning system, all part of it, right? They're all putting together. Same thing here, right? So many opportunities if you are into this, right? So the other lawsuit is if you look at it, the politicization of finance from the JP Morgan to that's President Trump, I think, versus Wall Street. Maybe JP Morgan is part of that. I yet to learn what the details. It's think like something to do with crypto asset, right? The normal banking, traditional banking, right? It's kind of have some issues, right? Have to take his personal wealth or company, something that accounts and money, right? Put into the crypto kind of asset, wealth management or capital management, right? So that is also very telling, right? Look at what I position is a new financial ecosystem, right? Unfortunately, it is already happening, right? And if you follow through, they have the Clarity Act put on hold, right? The crypto product, right? And there are quite a few things happening. I try to see if we can connect those, right? But for me, it's already connected. But the way how do I communicate that message, right? I'm practicing. I make long things just for me to really see what is the best way to deliver a message, right? I might need to cut it off, focus on one little topic, and then make it more consumable. But for now, let's do a long one, right? So that we can make sure that we lay the line, right? Build up the overall picture. So logistics, when I talk on a particular topic, if you want to see where they belong, you can come back. See that, right? So that is my way of doing things, not try to give you like the break news or surprises or this revolutionary, that tips, or this tool is good, technology. No, I don't have time for that, right? I'm actually using all of them, doing research, developing, building products, build up business and everything, right? I mean, you should do the same probably, rather than just being surprised or enjoy that excitement, right? Seems like somebody else is changing the world. Why don't you do it? The kind of, of course, we need some entertainment like this, right? Okay, if we follow through, right, from Europe, obviously, right, they are formidable. They have a lot of talents. They have the market, the regulation framework is pretty mature, right? And Queen go back to, I think, France, right? And not too sure how about the Mistral. It seems to be they're doing good, but I think they need more. Like, I don't see a lot happening there to go across the Middle East, right? Some bridging there, figuratively, like stable coins, these liquidities where the traditional finance to the new DeFi, if you will, the new crypto payment and asset, right? You need a bridge, right? Stable coins, part of that, right? But what are you really looking at the sort of $3 trillion opportunities compounding together? It's going to be how many trillion? You calculate, you do the math, right? One is the hardware, right? As I mentioned, component, right? If you want to do a new economy, reindustrialization or new industrialization, you need to move the goods and the a metal, a commodity, right? The component, the part, the cars, right? The vehicle, EV, sand, deal, but you need to move a lot of timbers, right? And some heavy metals, precious metals, right? So many things, right? You need to do. And you need to move the solar panels if you want to use it, right? You have LNG for that petrol, right? Gas, natural gas. So many things, right? And that's the hardware crash, right? It's kind of a lot of things gonna move around in a quick speed. We talked about the unitary robotics in Boston, the dynamics, right? To build a robot is not easy. You need a lot of parts, right? Even build a bicycle, right? You know, from a bicycle to a robot to a car to a ship, you know, to a rocket, right? Each and everything, right? That we see, we use, takes a lot of components. You need that. That's a huge market, especially in the AI era, right? Think, how do you build up a AI robotics nerve system? Build an eye, build a hand, build a finger, build a nose, right? Make it like a glass, right? You know, a lot of material to be on the move, right? The shipment part, right? The shipment is going to have marine insurance, obviously, right? Transportation is a part. You have marine insurance. That's the financial part of it, right? You need a lot of contractual things, the government. Tariff is one thing, but a lot more. You need clearance, you know. You need to make sure the containerization, right? You know, how do you make sure those equipment are being properly transported, insured, and safely arrival, make sure that transaction goes through, especially in such a fragmented financial global war, if you will, and energy to have control of silver, right? You're going to have a lot of blockers, right? Challenges. And the other is, as you said, you build a brain, right? And that's the technology part, the VLA, vision, language, and action, right? Multimodal, right? Build a brain is not easy, right? That's to do with chips, the models, right? Kind of training talents, right? Businesses, ventures, right? Products, all kinds, right? The other is the financial part. Right? The financial pivot is worth even another trillion, if not more. Like Canada tried to propose to the third place of, you know, final assembly point, this and that, you know. I think the best position is probably the financial part, right? Because without the money moving, then nothing going to happen, right? Money is both the ends and also the measure, right? You know, you have money, you can move it, you can start. If you don't have, you cannot even sustain. And if you don't make money, you know, you don't really contribute to the economy, don't pay tax, then you're not going to be sustained either, right? So we're in an age of AI and robotics. Everything will move different. We call it the year zero opportunity, right? So on the top, you can see, right? I make it a figuratively. This is where silicon need the biology, right? Like in the brain or in the nerve, right? You heard of the Neuralink that Elon Musk. I can show you a couple of pictures there, right? But essentially, they are really, let me see if I can find it. We can come back on that, right? Okay, this is in Neuralink, right? Industrializing the brain surgery, right? The robot, okay? You look at the needle, how many of them? They are tied together, right? With your brain cells and nerves, right? Okay? It's incredibly, if you look at this, right? Biotech, right? It is amazing, right? They have some sort of adverse events probably, such as biological chromosome, right? The they have making some progress, right? Because they are really tackling the final frontier, right? Redefine what human is, right? That's, I call it human beings versus robotic beings, right? That's where I think we need to anchor our thoughts, right? The thought process, so well. It's what should you say? Like that's where silicon meet your biological nerve and cells, right? Okay. But there are other approaches, as we know. Okay. You think Jeff Bezos, right? They have another approach, right? So, okay, this is where, as you can see, brain tissue is soft and dynamic, right? Electronics are hard and static. The goal is to match the mechanical properties of the cortex. Wow. Okay, it's quite amazing, right? Really, I mean, you need to really integrate the silicon and biology, right? I have to be in a positive loop, hopefully. The kind of analogically, right? You listen into the chat, right? And acquire the listener, then decode it, kind of translator, and then you produce some output, a digital command or whatever, right? Then you have some feedback, right? See? Then goes on and on like a flying wheel, right? A loop, infinite, right? So what it means is a 400 billion awakening, right? From love, curiosity. I mean, in order to understand this, right, I read hundreds of these. I mean, brain, anatomy, neurology, all kind of, right, each and every part of it. Not only the medicine, Western medical stuff, but also the Chinese part. They have a different approach, different view. Just, if you know, it's quite amazing as well. You look at it, different approaches. Bill Gates is more synchron, right? Transition to explosive commercial growth as well. Jeff Bezos, they're not going to inserting anything to your brain. Elon Musk, obviously, this one stream of the one school of thought, right? Jeff Gates, BlackRock, Neurotech. Right? You can see that Peter Thiel there. Some merger labs and Sam Altman, Eric from Google, right? They all have different approaches, right? It's a lucrative market, right? It's the final frontier define what humans are, right? Yeah, we need to follow through and watch this. I may make an independent and separate presentation later, right? But for now, let's cover them and see how far we can go. Okay, let's come back to our picture. Let's go through that. What I try to illustrate is goes to the consumer robotics, electronics, right? AI-enabled devices, to the enterprise. Enterprise like financials, right? The government agencies, manufacturers, factories, right? You name it. The mining, right? In a hazard, the environment like deep space, right? Or in the mines, right? And I mean, the reason that you need a quick flying wheel loop, like why the robotics in China have a different speed, because they have an idea. Tomorrow is in a factory, or even the same day, they will produce a little robot, trial it out, put on the street, deploy on the mine, place in a crowd street, right? In a hospital, right? Or just some financial transactions allow the robotic being to handle that, right? To do the patrolling, to do the fraud detection, to do the cleaning, right? By the way, plant the trees, for example, right? One of the amazing things, they use the robotics to, for example, to separate the fiber. If you have a lot of clothes dumping on the street, right? You have to shred it. You have to pick up a lot of different plastics, different material. They can recycle it, right? Recycling also extends to the garbage, right? We have buried in North America in the field, right? Dumping, right? But in China, they don't have enough because they have reproduced it to use it to produce electricity. Right? Now they have a shortage. Think about it. Without robotics, how can you even achieve that? Okay, there's a lot of real cases you could deploy that, right? Not just doing a show like flipping over or something, right? Or go to the moon, right? That's fantastic, but there are many other things you can do. Right? Any case, come back to it, right? Enterprise also means, right, you need to redefine the current technology, like how the banking system, the governance, how you monitor the tax, the collection, the credit, right? The health, right? Follow up the community nurse, the medical part, diagnosis, right? And all kind of outpatient triaging, following up, monitoring, right? Especially like scientific research part, medical part, right? So many things you could do, right? The deep mind part, they won the Nobel Prize, chemistry part, right? There's a lot more they can do, really. Now, as this lawsuit illustrates, right? A lot of regulatory, geopolitical things you need to navigate. It's a minefield, right? And that's where Canada may play a huge role, right? As I try to see from Europe, the Middle East, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, and to the US, may not go direct, right? You have a lot of blockers. This technology, capital, people, technology, everything, right? Have to flow, have to integrate, right? We need some sort of synergy, right? We really have to build some bridges, right? Collaborate collectively. Nobody can just do everything, as Premier said, right? We have to live in a world that you need each other, right? Total fragmentation is not good. Competition is okay, but don't just totally, closed off, a fortress kind of approach, right? And it's going to hurt yourself as well, right? But again, to really service in such a future, you need a new financial ecosystem in the age of AI and robotics. And Canada has a huge, pivotal, critical role to play. Hopefully you can play it well, right? On top of that, the base of that is that you propose some sort of corridor, final assembly, right? Innovation center. That's good. You have reaching, in resources, fantastic. Right? Now, talk about resources like a silver, right? It's critical in this AI robotics, right? And I don't have to explain why, but And I made a little show there, and the volume, the voice so low that nobody can hear anything. Some very kind audience reminded me, yes, I think hopefully I make it louder. Hopefully you can hear what I'm talking about. And yeah, I'm learning. I can make it better later on, right? But in any case, let's put in a little perspective. What do I mean? Right? We might be able to investigate once we have the lay of the land is clear to you, right? Okay, let me see what is the best way. Here's what I'm thinking about. How this whole thing comes together. You have to frame your thoughts, in my opinion, right? So that everything will fall in the right place. And whatever happens, it's like a needle pin drop on the floor. You're able to hear it. You might be able to immediately understand why, what happened, what is the consequences, what's the implication, right? Like what Carney, the Premier of Canada, have been talking. Why is that talk required? Why he talk like that? What is the consequences? What does it mean to you and me? Forget about, the countryside, the region, the government. What about you and me? What does it mean to AI robotics? What does it mean to the financial ecosystem? What does it mean to the minerals, the timbers, right? the energy, right? The people, right? What does it mean? Do you know? Do you care? You know, you probably should, right? So, okay, before we go too far, let's frame it in a way that hopefully can understand why we do this, right? And how we're going to build it up, right? I mean, this is all good, right? 2026 is the convergence, digital force, agentic AI, physical AI, physical force, energy, metal, regulatory force, sovereign capital, right? You can NVIDIA chips, right? Chatbots, data push, financial rewiring. I call it the new financial ecosystem. Right? You need rethink even what money is, right? What finance is. What you think about the real world asset based capitalization, the data based capitalization versus credit based, paper based, or digital money. A lot of things you need to figure it out, right? Not just AI robotics, many other things like how people should integrate, collaborate, how these money should come together, right? There are many things you need to really think through, right? And this tip of the iceberg, right? A lot of risks, right? Market mechanism, CME, the margin, right? JP Morgan, right? Talk about silver. It's quite a squeeze. The paper versus physical, right? You have options, you have future contracts. But do you have the real silver though? You don't, right? So what do? Okay. So you might have to pay a higher price because you cannot stop the AI robotics and manufacture many others, EVs, cars, solar panels, money, right? You need silver. Okay, here's why, classic bank, the title is, if you close your eyes and just listen, the financial rewiring, right? The innovation phase, right? Disruptive for sure, but it's also good, right? Maybe you could use the word as a revolution on. Yeah, I mean, you can dress up, put a new window on an old house, but that's not enough, is it? Right? If you still kind of lock into that credit-based, paper-based, derivatives sort of financial market, now getting physical, right? Real-world asset tokenization, and crypto payment. Think about stable coins. Regulations will come along, right? You can put it in a hold for now, but you need it. What do you do? Right? So this is where AI and robotics can help, right? So on the left, traditional finance, you think about the classic banking, right? The real estate deeds and treasury bonds, right? The stock market, and your retirement plan. You have to really think about it, right? Do you really think you can catch it up? The new one, I don't like to call it DeFi. Really, you don't have to be blockchain, 24/7 liquidity, smart contracts, blockchain, enabled AI, robotics, right? The agent valuation, QSE, dividend, real world assets, that's coupled, right? BlackRock already got there, right? And JP Morgan, Citibank, HSBC, Bank of New York, right? A lot of movement there, which are going to look a bit more there. But now, essentially, you need to rethink what money is, what financial system should be, like what the banking should be, right? UK rush into the Europe, right? The Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, Hong Kong. I mean, China is a different story, right? You might have to follow up, dig deeper if you want to understand it. This is important, right? And so, yeah, we're gonna get back to this, right? The old paradigm, the new paradigm, right? The year of proof concept. AM is the concrete reality. Right? I like that. You know, the stablecoin bill, right? Interesting, right? Interesting. So what is RWA, real world asset, right? You're really creating a digital twin of the physical economy. Right? You heard of the ontology, right? Peter Thiel, I think what is the CEO, Mark or Mike, right? And you heard of they created digital twin based on that, like simulate reality, like Jason Huang talked about his model built in NVIDIA to create digital twin of the factory and that. Yeah, but here is a digital twin of the physical economy. That's what RWA is, right? Yeah, it's a digital twin, right? It is creating digital proof of ownership of physical assets, real estate, credit, bonds, and others, right? And on the blockchain, maybe a public chain, private chain, enterprise chain, you name it, a lot of chains, right? You need smart contract, right? You may need special purpose vehicle to, carry that either ownership or use part of that options, right? Ownership, liquidity, accessibility, cost. Yeah, again, we're gonna dial back when we have some time, but let's go through them for a glimpse. There's a lot of ventures there already, right? Not that new either. A lot of challenge, right? Security, right? A lot of fraud, liquidity fragmentation, right? Different chains, right? Different tokenizations, and different management system. By the way, that's part of my offering, right? Heavy and deep in that. Regulatory friction, privacy, transparency, right? Physical backbone of the digital economy, right? Digital layer, the smart contracts as a token, data verification, sensors, servers, compute, location, right? Yeah, let's put into the CCIP, right? Cross-chain. My side, I call it token, right? Similar thing, right? Slightly, I think, in my opinion, more advanced. Convergence, market growth. Yeah, it's all good. Traditional asset, blockchain rails, real fraction of the old world in terms of the fees, but also very quick, right? Almost real time. This is not a visual, right? They call it the digital intelligence to physical reality. Very catchy phrase, right? But essentially, you have the rise of autonomous finance. On the left, on the right is the hard asset and energy pivot, right? Really good for countries like Canada, right? In my opinion. On the left, there are 236 billion AI market, right? How the money is going to flow, right? Transition to the agentic system, right? Passive LLM become actionable, right? Autonomous agent. Banks are shifting from the passive LLM to autonomous agents capable of independent execution. Right? The physical area in institutional banking, the vault security, the document digitization, a lot of things like eyes for scanning, monitoring, arms for document digitization. In an investigation of the ML, for example, you have a lot of cases to sift through documents, right? ID, telemetry data, the governance, right? So many data you need to really clean, right? JP Morgan Chase, strategic focus, right? approximately 30 trillion in the annual salary spend. Wow. The strategic focus, the City Group, right? Citibank, mandatory AI literacy. Okay, HSBC, they go even further, strategic focus. The fifth factor of production, they call it, right? Scaling the 30 million an annual client intersection, right? So on the right, let me show you. More like a hard asset. Okay. Yeah, you know, the transformer bottleneck, right? Previously current, right? And then silver physical squeeze, as we mentioned, right? I'm going to take a deeper dive, right? The nuclear energy re-rating, tech trends, right? No need energy. Like you heard of the how many data centers or energy centers, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Google, Meta, they're all building up the competition because they need energy. You need data centers, right? Otherwise, no matter how many chips you buy, like Microsoft, Nadella said, well, they are sitting on the shelf eating dust because there's no energy, right? Yeah, so try to put in a perspective. Visa, MasterCard, they all jump into the independent power, right? Really local, sufficient, in my opinion, local run, right? The grid is a long-term thing, but you have to solve the immediate problem. The coppers and silvers and rare earths, all kind of relevant to the thing we're looking at, right? So, yeah, hopefully you got the, apart from the challenges and divergence, we have convergence as well, right? Industrial, real world, you have to integrate that with the agentic AI, the embedded robotics into the new industrialization economy, right? New industrialization, they call it, right? If you look at it, operational premise, the boundary between have eroded. This is the year of proof. So I'm pretty sure you're going to change, right? Where you in January, right? You have the golden bar, right? Right? You got into the paper gold, a digital gold, right? You can put on paper as well, like a certificate, right? Many banks in the southern U.S. already been doing that, right? Then the layer 3 is the autonomous intelligence, right? You can slice it, really. Like you cannot just, if you don't want to get a whole bar of the gold, you can get slices of it, right? If you can have tokenize it, 1,000 tokens for one bar. You can buy 10 tokens, right? You're not going to cut that part of gold, right? But you, through the digitization, through the AI robotics kind of smart contract guaranteed, right? You could get it, right? Let's think about it. It's a sort of, you have to prove that works, right? And what is this? Outside the manager and the workforce, right? As I mentioned, workforce is ultimately that I might focus on, right? Real estate, private credit, right? Real estate, U.S. Treasury, right? They all try to get on trend. Any case, another way, liquidity, right? Settlement, ownership, growth, trillions, right? Obviously, 24. Mid-2030, how many trillion? See, paper contracts, right? The solution regulated stablecoin, right? Deposit insured. Right? This is where the agent LLM, JP Morgan City, HSBC. We look at that. Here's where the use case in banking, right? Compliance. Obviously, that's the first one must have. What is the good use case? If you have to do it, it proves way more efficient, way more. It's not only cutting costs, but also improve the accuracy, right? Compliance, right? Automated AML, KYC, real-time behavior monitoring, reconciliation, right? Document processing, onboarding, OCR, scanning, treasury, and lending. More crypto payment, if you will, real world asset tokenization. What is this? The eyes, right? That's what we mean. Robotics is the final part that I am thinking, right? It's my product, right? It's my product. Okay. This is a good way of thinking. Okay. Let me see if I can find a simplified version to frame our chat, right? Systematic failure point, financial risks, technical risks, operational risks, risk management as premier currently saying, right? The banks, JP Morgan, Citi, many more, right? This is three. This is unified portfolio total, right? The active management, democratizing, right? Accessibility, asset, the future of money, right? And programmable, regulated, stablecoin, right? Tokenized, the robotic computer power, decentralized cluster, security, right? Look at it, right? There's a lot of partners already in this business, right? We're gonna review them for sure. BlackRock, look at it, soft integration, the OPEX, right? They bridge the gap, and then the security first, zero trust kind of architecture, right? That's the BlackRock architecture, right? Yeah, we look at this many things, but we're gonna come back for this. The future of money, right? The fifth factor, right? Those are good phrases. So previously, we look at the silver as perfect stone. We look for the silver bullet, but we haven't found any, right? And Elon Musk commented, this is not good. Silver is needed in many industrial processes, right? True, but we're in the middle of the storm. But we're still yet not finding the silver bullet here, right? We can take a deeper dive, right? You might appreciate that how we come here, not in the past 7 years, but many years. Right? Because silver is both a metal, right, industry process, also a currency in a way, right? Especially in the AI era, it become RWA to be tokenized. Right? That's where we have to rethink about the financial system, right? What really we mean by the age of AI and robotics, right? What do we mean by physical AI? You need to get it physical, right? The real world asset is physical. This is something that is slightly more historical, right? Yeah, talking about this silver thing, right? You heard of the initiative from China, the Road and Belt and Road, whatever you call it, right? This is other part of the history, right? Slightly more financial, right? A lot of lessons being learned, experimented. Right? Not first time we come into this thing. If you look at it, right? If you know a bit of history there, right? Ming Dynasty, many lessons to be learned on the silver side. Right? But before that was Yuan. It's another dynasty, right? And then before that was Song, right? That goes about 1,000 years ago, right? When they got into Han, they already have this what we call stocks today, right? But even derivatives. But again, it's not the same as we look at it, right? So, I mean, essentially, this is what is going on, right? Quite imbalanced. Right? a lot of controls being placed, right? Restrictions. Yeah, lessons to be learned. We need to look into this carefully. Not just try to find a short-term solution, but the long-term sort of financial ecosystem. What money really is, or how to come today, what we understand money is, right? That is the question. It's not an easy task, for sure, right? But, Ian and robotics will define a lot of stuff we wish it doesn't define for us, but inevitably it will, right? So we also look at this one, right? The 2025 thing, right? It's a good visual. That's why I show you for a bit of things. The fortress kind of thing, nationalism, right? Integration become a leverage. The paper illusion versus the physical reality. We really have to think through, right? We are in. What is the price of silver if you check it? 100 or more than that, or 500? Back in 1980, right? The Pound Brothers, right? The market frenzy, they call it CME Chicago, right? Exchange, the silver rule 7, right? Drastically hiking the margin. Right? They're doing that today, right? Even more. Then the silver bubble 2011, right? The margin hikes again, right? And even right before the new year, it's massacre, right? Again, it's market, right? If you want to play, you play. If you don't want to play, you get up. Oh, that's part of the deal, right? And the solar energy, the EVs, AI electronics, robotics, right? EV, solar energy panels, right? Many things, right? The new reality, the fundamental shortage, strategic hoarding, right? Physical price versus paper, right? The paper market not meltdown, take down, right? The new reality, right? Kind of imbalance, right? You see some of the victims for sure, right? You're really risking, right? But what can we do? Any case, we look at this. All right, I think we talked about it, right? You have to have some sort of integration or collaborative, allow the talents integrate, allow the technology. Nobody can build the whole thing, right? As West in the US, I don't know where Canada is, right? 0 seems to be, right? Maybe I'm the first one. I don't know. Right? Maybe the whatever they call the partnership, maybe tomorrow they flip it. You never know, right? But I guess eventually have to build some sort of bridge, right? Integrate and collaborate. Cannot just get into the competition, the war zone, right? You need a demilitarized zone as well, right? Any case, the China part corresponding to NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, Qualcomm, whatever that is, right? And forgot the full name. OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, some others, Meta, right? And Elon Musk's company, right? It's a lot more, but big players at least 7 is AWS for sure, and Oracle maybe. In Japan, the SoftBank CEO Sun Zhengyi is quite active. I don't know what is next move. Maybe one day we'll take a look at that. But in China, you have DeepSeek, a pure researcher and disruptor. But I'm not sure if you know, they're in quantum funds, right? They're in finance, deep in finance. Some of the Wall Street firms, they're using it, right? Their whole system, whole algorithms from that, right? For money, finance, right? That's their the best skill. Right? That's why their models works probably the best in that domain, right? But again, they are not trying to look for a lot of profit. They have plenty of money to spend anyway. Alibaba, Queen, the model open source, right? The ByteDance, which is TikTok, right? They have their app AI models, right? The Tencent with the WeChat, right? Have Hunyuan integrator. The moonshot is from I mentioned that the Zhipu, they got already kind of IPO, Minimax, right? Xiaomi have their own stuff, right? The many others. So you name it, they have whatever you have in the US. They might have a counterpart. Baidu, I don't see it here. Maybe it should. I'm going to look at a bit more consumer side and enterprise, the infrastructure, right? China, right? Satellite 3, digital silicon, NVIDIA versus, right? They have the different architecture. A lot of breakthroughs in the recent months, right? Starlink, they also built some Starlink right now, right? Just as we are speaking, private venture, state-backed. They have plenty of money, but hard to get out of the country, right? Scale, protocols, efficiency, system integration, right? They're still behind in terms of the chips, right? But they're catching up. But the algorithm side, the model could be better, but maybe a little bit behind. Hard to say. All right, the training part. Okay. Well, I know that I don't have to from the scaling law to the efficiency. Right? Gonna win? I don't know. Probably not true. But how we have to look at the fortress kind of building, export control tariffs, right? Global South positioning, the Belt and Road, right? The Global South adoption, analog physics, New York. Yeah, it's kind of strategic, right? It's symmetric, right? It's symmetric. We're gonna look at more Huawei, right? Any case, let's recap on what Jason Huang been talking about. I think if you have watched it, you might agree or disagree. But let me give you my view, right? What it means, right? And let's just use. Yeah, I don't have anything to draw on. Let me use my marble. For those come for a reason, this I've done sufficient research. If the change or pivot that what Canada committed is true, which is going to benefit everybody, hopefully I can find some partners, right? I need some help as well, right? I cannot do it alone. This is, I'm going to build up the new workforce, right? In the marketplace based on research and product building, right? Deep in the domain, 3 domains that the first one already built up. The second one is follow. The third is, I hope family, they're deep in that. Hopefully they can advise me. But again, on the business side, we cannot rely on the family, right? The customization and the research product build a lot of build up the brain, right? The nerve system, the parts, right? And train them, give them domain-specific intelligence. That's important. Right? You need to sample them. You hopefully can make it a manufacturing in Canada, right? To build new workforce to reindustrialize, in my opinion, right? To regain that power, right? Again, you need a new financial system. That is what macro first side is for, right? You can spin it off, but essentially there's 3 line of things that try to put together. I need partners. If you have, doesn't matter, 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 100 million, the return is probably 100 times or more, right? No, need a bit of time, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, depends on how far you want to go, right? So, yeah, we've been talking about it. It's the dynamic, right? It's the mode, right? And we're in a crossroad for sure, right? And we're gonna really have to look into this, right? iPhone moment, if you will. Any case, let's dive deeper later on, right? Some flip, right? Can see that, right? But in any case, not dwell on that for too far. Let's give me my view. Okay, let's see if we can kind of bring together what we've been talking about, right, so far. My view is very simple, right? It's not hard to understand. Many people talk about the same thing, right? In the bottom, there are energy, obviously, right? The elements, metal, material, the physical, right? That's where you think about the financial system, the AI robotics, right? And also the sort of manufacturing part, right? And this is more technology innovation, right? But 6 layers as well, right? Energy, material, element. That's where the real world sort of what do you call it? Real world the asset anchored in, right? It's quite a jump, if you will. A lot of things you need to put in a gap. Then you got into the infrastructure. By that we mean you're moving the supply chain, right? The goods, the commodity, the parts, the components, right? The energy. Even you distribute the energy, like electricity. As you have solar panels, you have nuclear, whatever you generate it. Unless you want to consume it within your data center, you need a grid to distribute it. Same thing. The metal, right? The silver, whatever you need for your manufacturing industry, right? How do you get it? From the mine, you need to the refinery, you need to distribute it, right? You need to the factory. You need infrastructure. People need to move around, right? Money need to move around as well. Not only energy, material, component, right? See, you need that. That's called infrastructure. Then this is more of a chips, right? The fundamental part is computing, right? Chips like NVIDIA is doing really well, right? AMD, Intel, a few others catching up. Google try to do their own chips, and AWS and Microsoft, each and everybody try to compete, right? The acquisition you heard recently, right? How many? 20 billion? Forgot it, right? Then on the China, Huawei is doing really good. Yeah, no, there are 10 more really formidable chip makers, designers, but there are many others, maybe 100 of them working together because they are sort of trapped and they have to break through. The first layer, obviously, the model, right? LLM is one of the representative, but there are other multimodal kind of models, right? So that's right here. See that? We need more, like a vision, language, action, right? Even allow the hand to move, to touch, to feel, the tactile kind of sensor, the skins, the eyes, right? The ears. You want to put a glass. You need a different model for that, right? The typical, and also you get into the domain side, right? What banking is very different from a farmer, right? Agriculture is different from a fishery, right? Outer space different from in the mine. Maybe some similarity, some common things you could leverage, but again, it has to be domain specific. Context is essential, right? In a deep domain, you need to get really specific. As I said, if you get specific, solve a real world problem, then all your innovation will start to burst out, right? Because you're getting physical, getting specific, not just talking, catchy phrases. It doesn't really help you too much, right? The ontology is a big word, but how do you do ontology? Digital twins, another big word. How do you do a digital twin? A world model, or world physical. But how do you do it? Even you get into a brain cell, the proteins, right? How do they rotate? Do you know? I mean, forget about that. Even you get into the little knot on the counter of the coffee bar. How do you blend the coffee and do a little bit of art in the coffee? Right? Can robotics do that? What model you need to use? Probably different than what you draw a picture on the screen, right? Think about it. It has to be really specific, domain specific. And sometimes it's private. You don't want anybody to learn that. You cannot use a common model. You don't want to share your data. So what do? Ontology, right? Ontology is what? What is ontology? How do you build it up? Let me do a little presentation, but again, you need to think through, not just blindly assume, say, hey, this is good. I have a few catchphrases and I can do it. You probably cannot, right? Who is going to give you money? That's the problem, right? Who is going to buy your stuff, your ideas? Right? Because you don't have real stuff, right? Okay, that's number 4, which is critical. Number 5 is more application, like AI application, AI agent, right? The new financial ecosystem. You need a new AI kind of powered financial, the payment, whatever, the credit, the typical savings, tokenization we mentioned. How do you manage risks, right? The theory, scanning, the fraud, monitoring, right? And also, how do you really build a business market there, right? Wealth management, another thing, right? How do you guarantee the private banking part, the clients will really trust you, right? Able to use your AI robotics. Right? Okay? You cannot just, you have to be, again, be domain specific, right? Each and everything, like in the medical field, a nurse, right? Many different kind of nurses, right? Like, in a surgery kind of scenario, or in an ICU, or in a triad, community nursing, right? You try to distribute medicine to give a needle injection, right? Monitor chronic, illness, right? The pain management, right? There's a lot of stuff. The wound, right? The bones, right? And they're all different, right? Livers, kidney, hearts, brain, surgery. A lot of things different, right? You cannot just blindly. How do you really interpret the X-ray, the chart? I don't know. Can you do that using machine? Do you really want to let machine to take over your diagnostics? What about the ethical part? What about the privacy? What about, what if they make mistake? Who's going to be accountable? Again, human, right? And if you want a human to be accountable, then can any doctor compete with a robot who can learn the whole medical, PhD overnight? How can you compete? But again, you want them to take accountability, right? So how do you resolve that? New laws, right? New rules, new regulations, new ways, right? New thinking, right? New medicals, right? You might redefine the human, redefine what disease is, right? What health is, right? It takes a lot of stuff, not only technology, right? You're dealing with humanity, right? You're dealing life itself, right? But you're not God. Understand that, right? Don't play your finger in that way. Right? Then, again, there are a lot of agentic frameworks already published, like coding, one of them, right? Getting the enterprise versus the cosmetics, right? The consumer side. What is really important is what I mean by this robotics, right? Not only the whole robot, right? Human-like, humanoid, but it's like the hand, fingers I mentioned, the eyes, nose, and everything, skin, the nervous system, the brains, right? A lot of things you need to do. Huge, huge opportunity, right? Think, how do you redefine human being? How do you redefine the robotic being? They will need to work together. It's a whole new world, new workforce, a new ecosystem, really. But that's the opportunity, right? So these 6 layers is how I contextualize my thoughts. When I talk, I immediately know what I'm talking about, right? I can explain it, right? I can make it a really elaborate, right? When I talk about the applications, what domain I'm talking about, which part of it is it risk management, or is it about new business opportunity? Is dealing with the customer, or actually try to stop or prevent the fraud, right? Doing sales or doing service. There's a lot more stuff you can get into, right? And medicals as well, medical research. Dealing with protein and genome is quite different, right? Dealing with heart and brain is also different, right? Dealing with Chinese medicine or Western medicine, you say, well, Chinese medicine doesn't matter. It does. It's a lot of things quite different. But again, this technology you can apply into that domain, right? You cannot think, the old way, right? What happened last year is already old, right? You have to think toward the new ecosystem into the future, right? To be part of it. That's the only way you can, right? Unless you want to do, Neuralink and learn everything overnight, right? Put chips in your brain, right? There are also adverse effects, right? Maybe you do not want to do it so quickly, unless it's necessary. You have to, maybe, right? Then what is the other option? Participate, be part of it, right? That's the only way, right? Any case, so been over an hour, I think, right? I have to close it. But before that, I want to show you a few things that you could probably stick in your mind, right? Hopefully. Yeah, we talked about this. Canada, a new financial ecosystem, the age of AI, but let's look at something else. Okay, the triangle strategy. This is Canada part, the fragmented arbitrage, right? The Chinese capital, the Chinese component, the Canadian integration, the global market. Good thoughts, right? But how do you make it happen, right? The hub, the Vancouver, the market, the global, right? The capital, the component, right? The sovereignty, global market. The premier keep mentioning sovereignty, right? So obviously that's important, right? And from the robotics side, I want to use the word sovereign robotics, right? Meaning that the robotics itself is like a little territory tool, kind of independent. Don't know if it makes sense to you. You have to have that, right? Finished robots, components, capital, everything, right? That's good. Kind of, what is this? The factory performance, the raw operation. Okay. Renminbi financing security against data, not equity, right? Zero dilution, right? Capitalization. Yeah, these are part of the deal at the same time, right? See the strategic pivot, right? Navigating the great divergence. The operational, that's what I'm doing, right? So, let's do another. Let's see. Okay, we mentioned all of this, right? The EV part, like a corridor, right? Gateway. They send the China EV across meets the physical air. Okay. Here's another view, right? The world of the infinite intelligence, right? Data is the only mode. Precisely. That's why I need to stop for. I need to physical get real rather than purely, the research, development, building product, sell it. Probably in a new age, the public commons, the proprietary data, and the commoditized intelligence. Okay, they are very interesting. Walled garden, it is. what is this? The scientific singularity, right? Okay. Moving the pattern matching to of this generation. Wow, yeah. And I heard online they're using the robotics, machine learning researchers, researchers to develop chips. I don't know whether it's true or not. It's certainly kind of interesting. The brain, right? Optimus, right? Wow. Humans are the biological loader for digital life. That's Elon Musk. Right? Alignment problem, the strategic deception. We're building things we do not understand. I think Jeffrey Hinton might have some thoughts there. Right? But again, what are these? January, location, Texas. Right? Hinton. Oh yeah, it is Hinton. Right? What is this? Universal business truth. The easier, the richer. If you want to increase your revenue, you have to shrink the workforce, right? Oh, you're not shrinking. You use just robotic workforce, right? Robotic bin worker, right? That I'm built for you. Okay? It's one way or the other, right? You have to find a way to create the income for the real human, right? So we'll have to close it, right? This is where Elon Musk, right? So the Microsoft OpenAI, right? The innovation, data sovereignty, residency. Right? We got into a lot of problems right now. Zero knowledge proof, right? The verified data validity without exposing the raw content. Right? And the IP, NFTs, minting the data set and model the asset track lineage. Yeah, it's exciting, right? Creators can earn automatic royalty when AI models use their work. So with the copyright crisis, I love to see that. A data vault, right? Asset. That's also part of the asset, not just the metals and critical elements, right? The silver, right? Or mines, but these also real world asset, right? If you will, like your equity is also real world asset. I don't know if you get it, or financial asset. Doesn't matter. This is kind of a centralized trap. When OpenAI pivot the economics of centralized AGI mandate monopoly. Wow, winners take all, right? That's why it's a lawsuit, I guess, right? OpenAI, non-profit. Oh, okay. Yeah, I need to follow up. Probably you should too. The promise, the friction, the pivot, the war, and the lawsuit. Okay. 2015, 10 years journey, man. It's like a marriage. Yeah, this is where, okay, X Corp, XAI was Musk, Baidu, Alibaba, Anthropic, split. Eventually they come together. Antitrust, contract litigation. Then the Microsoft, OpenAI, and Microsoft, Google, Meta, no, anything. So we're going to follow up, but we have to look at Web3 AI, okay? The governance on-chain, right? The DeepIn, right? The physical infrastructure. There's a lot to look through. We're not going to get everything done in one day. Right? Innovation 1, the fair value distribution. Innovation 2, DeepIn, physical infrastructure, right? Decentralized network, GPU, JPU, democratization of compute, the $1 trillion thing, right? Again, we talked about this. Where it is innovation, the ultimate safety thing, the management proposal, right? The community fork. I want to get into all of this, right? But let's see where we should close. Probably come back to this, right? This is what we try to put forward. I don't know how successfully we communicate it, right? But we have to let it sink in. There are many things, like I laid out the 6-layer kind of thing, but whether it makes sense or not, position is China, Canada, the latest development. Maybe new things come out. The U.S., the supply chain, the Europe, right? The Middle East, Singapore. The many other factors we need to consider. Essentially, 3 kind of trilateral things blended together. The AI robotics kind of innovation, technology, product, and everything. The other is more physical, right? The elements, materials, energy, they come together, right? The hardware, and then the financial ecosystem. The money has to flow, the people have to flow, talent, right? Acquisition, merger are going to happen. The tariff war is going to continue. Right? Integration at the same time, collaboration. A demilitarized zone is required. The bridge has to be built. Right? A kind of corridor, right? Assembly point. Doesn't matter how you do it. Right? And I believe what I propose, what I build, the best potential. Right? I'm targeting the $3 trillion market. Right? Hopefully, get a fraction of that. Whoever is coming along, hopefully you kind of do it together. Right? That's all. Right? Why I'm doing this. All right, play a bit of music, then we can close. We can catch up another time. Thank you.
对酒当歌，人生几何？譬如朝露去日苦。